All right, well, welcome everybody to the first meeting of Suffers Arizona. I'm really excited about putting this session together. The idea here will be meeting once a month, most probably the third Thursday of every month. This might vary, but yeah, that's the plan. We will be covering topics from SAF for beginning to more advanced topics. Tonight it will be a little informal as we get some of our organizational box workouts, so please bear with us. I want to thanks everybody for showing up. All our sessions are going to be kind of following this agenda format. We're going to do a welcome and then some announcement. We're going to introduce our speaker. Tonight is my good friend Joche Ojeda. Then we'll go over to the presentation, and then we're going to do some questions and answers at the end. So please feel free to put everything, any question that you have on the chat, and we'll definitely go back to that one at the end. So some announcement that we have this week, I will say the first one, and actually the one that I'm most excited about, is that we just started SAFER's introduction following the flow of Summaring Weekly, where they have some Summaring introduction, and we thought that that was a great idea, so we can meet and ask some pretty interesting questions to some of the community about what they're doing with SAF, what are the real world examples that they have. So I'm really excited to have our Dev Express MVP and friend Manuel Grunner, where he actually goes about how he started with SAF, what is the most enjoyable project that he had, some advice for beginners. So I will definitely recommend this reading. And actually following his blog, he has really nice content here. As a second announcement, we have SAF already published their first ASP.NET MVC Core demo, where they do a really nice step-by-step tutorial. They go all over about their security system, the authentication. So I haven't actually had the chance to play with this, but it seems really interesting, and they actually took a lot of time to put it step by step. So yeah, go ahead and play with it. The one that I also am looking forward for next year is this Blazor demo. I'm actually can't wait to get my hands on the CTP, but they already showed the first view, the first CRUD operations type of demo, and it's actually looking really good. It has really nice UIs. It has some I think that this new safe and close, safe and new is looking pretty slick. So with that out of the way, I want to move our session to my good friend Joche Ojeda. Joche has been developing with SAP since day one. He's the CEO and founder of Big Framework. Big Framework being one of the third-party DevExpress validated and recommended training classes. He has been training teams of several developers, actually myself included, and he will be talking us about how to ease the learning curve in SAF. We all love SAF, but we know that sometimes just starting out can be a little overwhelming. It has a steeper learning curve, so Jose will give us some tips and tricks on how to make that learning curve more enjoyable. Joche, I'm gonna turn this over to you. I'm gonna make you a
Okay,
presenter, and we can get started with the presentation. I will be
per
watching the chat, so please feel
perfect.
free to ask any questions.
Okay, so let's get this party started. This is a programming party. So, okay, Javier, did you switch the view
I
or
did. I
not
did
yet?
make you host, so just share your screen now. And we can
Okay,
go from there.
let's see. Great. I'm going to share everything. So, because I will use the browser sometimes, then I will use the code and the presentation. Can you confirm that you can see my screen right now?
I can definitely see it.
Okay, so let's start. Uh, I don't like PowerPoints that much, but sometimes you have to use them to make a point. But the main thing about today meeting is the code. But let's use some PowerPoint before. So the main topic of today is how to ease the learning curve of SAF. Well, SAF is, I would say, is the opposite of a traditional approach to solving business problems. In regular development, I'm from El Salvador, and I can say that we're not that advanced in that country. But we use all technologies like Fox Pro, Access, and so on, and we use structured programming. So when you use XAF, you have to change your mind. So that's what we're going to see a little bit in this presentation. So, well, first who I am. My name is Jose Manuel Ojeda. We use really long names. And also everyone is named Jose, like my dear friend here, he's Javier, but he's Jose Javier. Sometimes in the groups that we have, that we do for the community, they say like, how come everyone is named Jose? So, well, it's a common name in Latin America. So I'm the founder of Build Frameworks. I have, what can I say, uh, a small addiction to create reusable components. It's harder than it looks. You create your own classes, your own libraries, but you need to train yourself in using them. So that's the main, I will say, the main idea of it frameworks is create a lot of small frameworks that we're going to reuse. That's the why we opened the company. Here you can see my website, my personal blog, and my Twitter handler. If you want to contact me or follow me, you can go through any of those ways, basically. So let's move ahead. So this is the agenda for today. First, we're going to do a quick XAF overview. Then why we're going to use XAF, why we think it's a good idea to use XAF. Then some of the basic terminology, because if you're going to start with XAF, of course you will Google everything. Everyone does at this age, at this time of the civilization. Like whatever you don't know, you Google it. So you will find some terms over and over again in each post, in each ticket that you read. So it's better that you have them, like you have a good understanding of them. So we're going to review the basic terminology. We're going to do a demo, like a real demo, like writing code. And then we will review what the community is doing, some resources, and then some small announcement in SAF2 mobile. And in the end, question and answers. So let's move ahead. First, this is the overview. I guess every person who have used SAF at one time found this picture. Actually, I have this picture in one of the oldest presentations, presentations that I use to teach my classes. I have trained, I don't know, maybe 50 team of developers in Latin America, US, and Europe. So I have my presentation since long time ago, but this is a new version because it includes mobile. The really old picture didn't include mobile, but in here we can see the layers of the architecture of SAF, which it doesn't say that much for a new person. But as time goes by, you understand why so many layers and and how to use them. I remember one of my students long time ago asked me like, "Hey Jose, why do you need so many projects in a SAF application? I usually do all of mine in one." So, but we will understand why is that and why it's good to have it. So, um, first, I want to stress that the the core of SAF is still XPO. Um, let's start from the beginning, from the ground up. Um, the first the first technology that Developer Express releases was XPO. Then SAF came after that. They used to have UI controls, then they have XPO, and then if you mix the UI controls with data access component like XPO, you end up with an application framework. But of course, you just not end up with an application framework. You have to make the application framework, and then you have to think about the good practices. Uh, what what your framework is going to follow. So first, let's see the lower layer, which is the XPO layer. We know that XPO is an ORM that can connect to up to 14 databases. That is not true. Actually can connect to more than 14. Because just for example, in Bit frameworks, we have at least 3 different well, maybe even more, maybe even 5 database connectors that don't come out of the box with XPO, but that some other customers have requested because they really need it and they love XPO. They love the way to work with it. So they say like, okay, let's do a specialized connector. So we have created a specialized connector for SQL Server to support some features that XPO don't support out of the box. For IBM DB2, for AS400, for those big mainframes. So we did a project in Dominican Republic where the customer wanted to use the database hosted in the AS400 and put a user interface made in XAF. So for that, we modified the DB2 connector for normal DB2 to connect to the AS400 version. That was an amazing project because it opens the horizon so big. Basically, each banking entity or financial entity in the world use those type of servers, AS400. So now with a tool like XPO, we can offer them services. We can tell them, hey, let's do an application in XAF that will write to your mainframe. And I found that amazing. It's a big opportunity that before it was only open for people who use Java, maybe C++, COBOL, Fortran, but not anymore. We can use it with XPO. So for me, that's one of the greatest things about XPO, how extensible it is. So, well, that's the lower layer. Then they provide a business class library, which basically is some of the classes or objects that you will use in all of the applications. Most of the time, we define something like user, role, country, address, street, and so on. So you don't need to define those. They come already built in with XAF, and you can extend them or you can create your own. But uh, try just to not reinvent the wheel. If they're there, just use them. So they provide something, you can use it or not. But I strongly suggest you that you use them. Then we have the application-specific business classes. So those are part of the framework, are not, sorry, those are not part of the framework. Those are the classes that you create for your own business problem. For example, actually right now I'm working in a software for a photo studio, and the software is made in XAF. So I define an object that is called printer, an object that is called camera, an object that is called photo station. So these here are the objects that we define for our own application. Those are not the common object that exists in every application. Those are the specific to our problem, to the business problem that we're solving right now. And then we have the controller library. As you know, XAF they use the MVC model view controller methodology. So it comes already with a lot of view controllers and controllers that will create everything from the main window, the user interface, and so on. So these are like the internal parts of XAF, let's call it that way. And then you will create your own controllers to handle your business logic, to handle um, what problem are you actually solving. So this part in like pink grayish, I don't know which color is this, is your code actually. And this green niche is developer express code. So with the mix of this, with the mix of the business class library that they provide and the ones that the business object that you provide, and with the controller library that they provide and yours, then you create this, the top part, which is the views, which are the representation of the data, and the application model, which is you have a hard version and a soft version that you can customize in the end user. Actually, when the software is running, you can do some changes um, in the end user without having to go back to the IDE and code them again. So I explained the picture, but let's see what the bullets are actually here. So first is a single code base. Like 99% of the code will be shared in your application. That's really good, especially if you want to do a web application. For example, I have this joke that I hate web. And well, it's not a joke, it's true. It's not that I hate web, it's that I don't like to write HTML, JavaScript, and to go through all the layers. For me, I'm more an API developer. I don't care that much about user interface. For me, it was really hard to draw forms at the beginning when I was starting the computer science business. So when I found SAF, I say, well, this is amazing. I can write just code and I will have a user interface without having to actually drag and drop any control in a form. So that's amazing, especially because we will produce more than one application. We'll produce a web application and a Windows application. And of course, in the future, maybe 2020, by the end of 2020, you will have a mobile or a Blazor application. So the future is exciting. Also, it's a really mature framework. It's quite old. I think like it's 15 or 17 years old, something like that. I don't even recall when I started with SAF, but I remember it was day one because it was when I started working with SAF. I was already a Developer Express customer, and I started being a Developer Express customer for not for .NET, but for Visual Basic 6. So they have controls for Visual Basic 6, the old Visual Studio before .NET. So we were customers at that time. And then .NET came along. We moved from Visual Basic 6 to .NET. Then we started using XPO because we didn't like Ado that much. And then SAF. And at that time, SAF was just an article, a post. Someone from developers wrote, I think this is how you should make an application. And after that, they created a CTP and so on and so on. And that's the huge, amazing framework that we have right now that is SAF. Also, this is good for everyone. I mean, I used to be a one-man shop. I visit the customers, I did the invoicing, I did the accounting, and you can produce as fast as a big team, even maybe faster. Because when you're just one developer, it's easy to get your code to work. You don't have to make sure about the Git merge and so on. You just produce your code and your code will be congruent itself because you're a single person. But you can, with a framework like SAF, you can meet your customer today and then have a prototype tomorrow. You cannot do that in any other technology. So in general, that's really good, especially if you're a small shop, like we are at this time at least. And of course, they're going to produce a new platform, which is Blazor, which is what all the technology is pointing right now, not only .NET, but Blazor is a standard WebAssembly actually. So C++, Java, everything can be compiled to WebAssembly. So that's basically the future. So they are already there. So why not to join them? Okay, it's time for the next slide. Okay, why SAF? Developer productivity. First, that's the first actually. Someone came to you with an idea, you can produce a prototype in a few hours. Actually, I don't know if they still use this slogan, but they used to be like stuff done before lunchtime. So it means that if your boss comes to your office or your customer comes to your office at 8 a.m. in the morning or 9 a.m. in the morning with an idea, you can present a prototype by lunchtime. And it will do already all the CRUD operations and all the UI. You will have two platforms at the same time, web and Windows. So why not? I think it's the most, is the fastest way to produce a .NET application. I don't think there is any other way, actually. Then it's highly customizable. Uh, every part of SAF can be changed to your will. Of course, for that you will have to go deeper, learn the source, fail. You know how it is to get to know something. You need to get lost at the beginning. So you will get lost. I assure you that. But if you are in touch with the community, if you contact their support, it will be easier. So everything can be done in SAF. It's depending also just in the time frame that you have. If you're in a hurry, of course, you will not do the changes that you want or as you wanted, but that will happen in any language, in any platform, in any framework. So don't be afraid of SAF. SAF is just a .NET application. that you don't see the code. It's because it's compiled and use a lot of DLLs, but it's there. You have the source. You can change whatever you want, basically. So that's really, really good. But you need to give one step ahead and say, well, I'm going to take a look to the source. I'm going to take a look to the files. And of course, you will not do that the first day, but you will do it at one moment. Um, then also, this is for me also one of uh, the main topics why I will choose XAF as a framework is because it creates a common language for developer teams. For example, I used to train, I think one of the biggest groups that I trained, it was about 20 developers. And I asked them, I asked three random people to step ahead, to step forward, and ask them, hey, I want to do an application and I want to do a validation. Where will you do it? And one said, I will create a trigger in the database or a constraint. The other one told me that he will create a library with the validations. And the other one told me that I will just put it in the handler in the user interface. So if you don't have a framework, a common language for everyone, when you tell your team, hey, make a validation for me or make this feature for me, uh, everyone will make it as they understand it. So if they are better using databases, they will use SQL for something. If they are better in user interface, they might do it in the user interface. Or maybe they are component oriented and they will make their own business class library to handle the validations. So in this case, XAF create a common language for all the developers. I can tell anyone on my team, hey, I want this validation, I want this rule, and they will create exactly what I want, and using the code that I will understand. So even if they leave my organization, I will be able to go back to their code and just totally understand it because it's written in the way that I can read it, basically. So that's amazing. I don't know if you have ever tried to follow up with a legacy project that someone else did, and maybe they disappear, maybe they don't work in the company anymore. Just to debug that, to follow step by step what they tried to do or what they did, is really difficult. You need to understand what their logic was, why they were thinking about. In this case, no. If you use XAF, you know where to check. You know how a validation is done, how a business object is defined, and so on. So there's no much way around to get lost. And also, well, all the stuff that I'm saying are amazing, I will say. It's a product that is customer focused. They actually really ask everyone, hey, what is this problem? Why are you having this? Where does it hurt for you? How can we change that? But of course, I think that they're a really good company in that way, that they always ask the customer what they want. But also as a customer, you need to be a little bit responsible and try to do your work, in the sense that you need to to be able to split what is the business problem and what is the technical problem, because the customer support is the most amazing support ever in any company, any type of support that I have used before. Developer Developer Express for me is number one. But why? Because little by little, I learned how to ask them questions. You need to make sure that you actually focus on the technical point and not in the business problem, because sometimes you just start telling a story, and of course you will confuse the technical support, and they'll say, oh, well, you're asking for your business problem, not for the technical problem, so you need to fix that yourself. So if you learn how to make the right questions, you will have the most amazing team like covering your back. When I pay my first subscription for Dev Express Universal, which is like $2,000 or 2,000 something, I live in El Salvador at the time. It was really expensive for me to pay it. But then I learned, well, this is, um, now I don't feel alone. I have a huge team of the best developers in the world covering my back. If I get in trouble, if I write the right question, they will help me. So it was just like that. Um, I was a one-man shop, and the way to grow was doing that, having the correct business partner with the technology. In this case, XAF. Also, the community is growing. Actually, I handle the Spanish-speaking community. Now we have another group which is also related to the topics that we love around .NET, which is XAF, XPO, OData, and Xamarin. So the community is not only a pure SAF community, but you will mix and match all type of technologies that can live around SAF. In this case, Xamarin and OData, for example. So that that is great because technology don't exist in an island isolated. You need to coexist with other technologies. So it's good to know how can I move my application from SAF to Xamarin and so on. So we have another group for that. And then again, I tell this before, they have the most amazing customer support and tech support also. Well, now it's time to learn about the terminology, the basic terminology. And well, hold on, I just need to see something here. Um, well, first this we will cross it with when we do the technical demo, but we will check about the project structure, why there are so many projects, what is an object space and what is a session. For the people who come from XPO, that's one of the biggest um, problems that you have when you come from an XPO background and then you move to SAF, that why they have a different object for that, like to emulate the session. Then we will learn what the views are, which are the SAF call user interface views in general. Doesn't matter to which platform is oriented, it's just a view. Then we will learn about controllers, actions, modules, the model, the application model, which is something amazing. It's an amazing idea. A little bit of the application lifecycle and how a SAF application is just a regular ASP.NET application or Windows Forms application. So let's move ahead. First, we will see what the object space and the session are. Long time ago, like I think it was 2012, there used to be only one object space, the XP object space. Of course, it was not called like that at that time. But if you come from another ORM, like Entity Framework, let's say that the object space or session are basically the equivalent of the DB context in Entity Framework. So it's basically your bridge from an object-oriented world to the relational database world. Is something that will basically parse whatever the database give us and make it objects and handle cache and so on, so on, so on. So basically, what we have is right now at this moment, we have an interface called e-object space that basically if you implement this interface and a second interface that is called e-object space provider, you can access whatever you want in SAF because SAF data access is not XPO or Entity Framework, is object space and object space provider. If you create your own implementation, you can connect it to whatever you want. You cannot imagine how many requests I got about, hey, Jose, why don't you make an object space provider for MongoDB so we can use non-SQL database? And of course, it's possible to do it. The code is there. So you just have to do the work, basically. So this is really extensible. You can do any type of mix and matches that you want if you implement those interfaces. So basically, just to tell the difference between these two, object space, which is iObject space and iObject space provider, are the data access layer of SAF. Session is the data access layer of XPO, basically. So it used to be one thing, then they split it to to be able to be more open to new technologies. That's why you use interfaces to say like, well, I don't know what you will implement in the future or what we will implement in the future, but as long as you keep this contract, you can hook up any type of data access database, whatever, you name it. So that's the main difference, basically. Session is a little bit lower because it's XPO, and object space is a little bit higher because it's the bridge from XAF to any data access like Entity Framework and XPO. Then we have the views. In a XAF application, each business object is represented in more than one view, actually around 4 views by default. So for example, if you create a class named product, then you will create product list view, product detail view, product lookup this view. And if it's composite, if you use product in any other object, you might have a composite view also, where product will be in there basically. So that's, for me, this is one of the I will say like the most beautiful thing about XAF. I remember when I was doing an application in the most traditional way, dragging and dropping controls in the form. To make a lookup in Visual Basic 6, and in .NET is almost the same. You need to create a connection, a record set if I recall well. Then you need to put the control and do the data binding. You need to set the key and the display value. And any other filter, you need to do it also. So to create a lookup for any other object, it was a big story. So if your object contains navigation properties to 10 objects more, you need to do that for each property. And that takes a lot of time. So something that is so small can take so much time in traditional development that with XAF creating the view automatically for you, it will save you, like I would say, 90% of the time, even more. So the default views are list view, detail view. This comes from the object view, which is basically the one who do the CRUD operations. Then we have something for data analysis, which is the dashboard view, and the composite view that basically you can mix and match all of the objects below. So you will find this word in a lot of articles and in a lot of technical support tickets. Then the controllers and actions. Basically, XAF, they define what the user can do or how the user will interact with the application. I remember I was presenting a class today. I was teaching a class, and someone asked me, like, Jose, like your XAF is really like small. They only have like 5 actions, and I don't know what type of application you make. He told me, but in my software, I use like 200 type of actions. Well, it's not true. You can have 200 implementations of actions or buttons or whatever you name it. But if you really think about them, most of them they fall in one of these representations. A button in any application, in any Windows Forms application, Visual Basic 6 application, is basically what in XAF is a simple action, something that I press and execute a handler. A pop-up. Sometimes we want to open a new view in a Windows, in a new Windows. For that, we use the pop-up window show action. Sometimes we want to read a value and then execute some code. That is the parameterize action. And sometimes we want to present a tree of choices. There's a single choice action. So basically, within these 4 here, all the interactions that the user can do to your application, how the user will interact with your application, can follow on these 4 type of actions. Because the action URL is basically a button that do a navigation in web for a URL. So This is basically the same as the first one. So believe it or not, that's more than what you need for creating an amazing business application. So uh, we will do a small example of some of them, not all of them, because otherwise it will be a long meeting. But I will show you at least the basic ones. And regarding the controllers, we have what is called a view controller, which obviously is how you can interact with a view. But at this time, you don't know um, which platform is the view, and if the view is a detail view or a list view. Is basically the generic concept of a view. So if you want to interact with any type of views, the one that we saw before in here, you just need to create a view controller, and you will be able to access the views and all its functionality, and also change it if you want. Then you have a Windows controller. Sometimes you don't want to manipulate the data showing in the view. You want to manipulate the window, what the container is. For that, you use a window controller. And then you have the object view controller, which is something in between, because you can access both there somehow. So also gives you some control of the CRUD operations. So it's something I would say in between. So next slide. These are all the modules that XAF comes with out of the box. In here, we have highlighted some of them because another company, Yamachant, they did a demo for Developer Express where they cover these modules. So we just put them in green to know that we will not repeat those topics because they have created an amazing video already. So these are the modules that comes with XAF. I mean, XAF is growing, growing, and growing, and sometimes it's getting smaller also. I remember there was a huge expectation for this workflow module, but workflows are so complex that the 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 module was not that popular in the end. It was really popular at the beginning, but in general, workflows in any way are complex. So people prefer start using the state machine, which is a way more simple way to create workflows. So in here you have almost everything you need to produce the most amazing business application ever. So, and even if you don't, if this is not enough, there are some communities projects that create open source module, and there are also commercial modules that you can buy from any other third-party company. So in general, you have the options to use what XAF provides you or Developer Express provides you. You can create your own modules, or you can buy from a third party or from open source, or get it from the open source community, basically. So in here about the community modules, we have, of course, the oldest of them is the Expand framework, which is created by Apostolis, a person from, he's from Greece. He's an amazing programmer. When I was starting with Developer Express, the company that I was working for, they hired Apostolis to teach me some programming techniques. Of course, at that time, I was like 23 years old. I'm almost 40 now. So it's been a long time ago. And I can say that he was one of the most amazing developers I ever met, with the full knowledge of .NET and all of these parts. Then this is my humble contribution. We have the Ultra modules for XAF. We only have like 4 modules right now, but basically this is me and some of my friends that we have created so much stuff for XAF that we want to put them out there so other people can use it. And also it was an experiment to be able to handle multi-target libraries and nuggets. So it started with like both of them, like trying to put out there the code that we have from other projects, and also being able to learn how to do software distribution in the way that big boys do it with NuGet, basically. Then we have our friends from Yamachant. They have also some, I think they have open source modules, and they have also pay modules. And then we have SendDev. They make modules for basically dashboard and data analysis. I have not checked them personally, but I know that they are great in that area. So check them out if you're into data analysis and that stuff. So let's move forward a little bit. Oh, now it's time for the technical demo. Good. It's time to see some code. So I will go back a little bit because we will need to go to the basic terminology. So we will work in the code based on this set of bullets. The first, we're going to see the object, the project structure. Actually, you should say solution structure. We will change it, I guess. And a little bit of each of these parts. So it will not happen in order. Of course, the first will be the solution structure, but then we will not see the object space versus session first. I guess we'll see the controllers next, and then modules, model, and so on. So it will not be this order, but we're going to go one by one. So let's start from the scratch. Just opening the, the studio. Let's create a new project. Actually, this should say create a new solution. Since XAF is what I do the most, the first is always XAF here. So I'm using 19.2.3, I think, is the latest one. So let's go ahead. This will be demo Arizona. And I strongly suggest that you should do any of your new projects in 4.72, or actually anything that is greater than 4.6.2, because it will make it compatible with net standard. So then you will be able to port your code to other platforms like Mac and so on. So this is a good thing to remember. Let's do it in 4.7.2 in this case. And let's create the project. The first thing that you see is the wizard that asks you which platforms you want to target to. In this case, we're going to do web and Windows because mobile is in maintenance mode. Actually, they will deprecate it, I guess, soon when Blazor version is out. So let's go next. Well, right now we have two options. First is Entity Framework code first on the left side. And in the right side, we have XPO. Well, I've been using Entity Framework for some mobile projects, but I can tell you I'm in love with XPO. I love how it is. I love how it works. For me, it's the most amazing ORM ever. So developers wanted to be open to include new data access. Some people actually love Entity Framework. So they included. And there used to be like another data access or not data access, but there used to be another programming paradigm, which was domain components, which is not included anymore. I think it's not supported anymore, but domain components is a really beautiful technique to create a usable applications or usable libraries at least. So in this case, we're going to use XPO because we know that all the modules already work perfectly with XPO, and they will work first with XPO. Sometimes maybe you don't see it at this time, but since I was through all the life of XAF working with XAF, well, there was a new module sometimes. Then the module was first released for XPO, and then a few months after, they released it for Entity Framework. So if you're using XPO, you will have always everything that is new will work first with XPO and not with Entity Framework. So it will be like 1 month apart, but who wants to wait in general? So I strongly suggest XPO. XPO is better. So then the wizard asks for which type of security or authentication we want. In this case, the most common is the standard authentication, of course, which is a username and password. Then you have the Active Directory authentication, but sometimes it's tricky because it doesn't present a login form. It just assumes that you're logged in the system, your OS, and it checks the credentials from there. So somehow it's tricky because you don't see the UI, like a form to ask you for the username and password. Then the permission policy. We have allow deny or deny. You can just deny basically. So by default, I think allow deny is better because you can say like, I want everyone just to read, or I want to allow everything. So it will reduce the time that you will spend doing the setup for the roles basically. So we're going to leave it in allow deny in this case. And then which type of database security you want, which is the integrated mode. You can do it in the UI level to hide some stuff that users don't have permission. And then you can have WCF. WCF doesn't make that much sense if you're going to use an ASP.NET application because both are some type of servers. So it doesn't make more to have a server over a server. It doesn't have much sense. But in general, WCF, I love the technology. It's something really deep. I remember when it was released, I was in New York, I think at that time. And I went to a seminar, which was like 10 days for WCF. It was one of the most deepest seminars I ever attended. The knowledge of the people who was explaining was really deep in network stuff and also in .NET. WCF is an amazing framework, especially if you do network protocol type of software. But sometimes it's an overkill and it's quite obscure. Obscure. You need to know about what you want to do with the network and the stuff. And it's really big also. You can do whatever you want with the communication. You can include compression, encrypt the packages, make the application resilient. You can do whatever you want. Of course, you need to know WCF for that. So in this case, I think somehow it's an overkill. And also it doesn't work well with Xamarin at this point. Not because of Developer Express, but because of .NET not moving all the WCF components to to Xamarin EO, Xamarin Android, and all the other platforms. So in this case, uh, I don't think WCF is the way to go. So in this case, we will use integrated mode because WCF, we're going to take it out of the equation. Then next, here, this is something that I think it was created by the feedback of the people because before you need to drag and drop the modules in the module designer and you need to do it for each platform and you forget and you put the wrong one and then you mix the references. So to make that easier, they ask you which modules you want to implement. So in this case, we're going to implement some modules like in the wizard, and we're going to implement some modules like in the traditional way, so you know how to do it. Because sometimes you will think, oh, there is no other way to to implement a module if I don't do it from the beginning of the application, and it's not true. Of course, you can do it at any time. So in this case, we're going to do okay. Let's see, file attachment. We're going to do key performance indicators, the pivots, reports, state machine, validation, and I'm going to include the clone. Well, no, I'm going to change this because I'm going to include the clone object, but I'm going to remove the pivot because I want to show you how you can implement in that you need to implement all the platforms. So the clone object is just agnostic. It's just for business logic. So we will see how to implement a module that you need to implement in all the levels of the application. So with this, we are covering basically from the terminology modules. See, it's that easy. So let's go back. And where is the XAF window? I think it went to the back. Here it is. So let's continue. And let's finish. Let's create the application. Okay, so this is scary for someone who is just starting. Why? Because usually you just have new Windows Forms application and you create everything within one assembly. And here you have five. So you think, oh, why is this? Why is so big? Well, if it serves a purpose, which basically is um, this in the module that we will call from now on this diagnostic module, because it's not oriented to any platform like web or Windows. You should create all your business logic, whatever doesn't require an UI. And the best way to know that how this was planned is that if you see the reference from this project, there is no platform specific reference for .NET. For example, if you know how .NET is structured, you know that all the UI interface for Windows is in a DLL called System Windows Forms. And for the web, is in System Web. So if you see, we don't have reference for them in here, which means that this project is not meant to write any user interface code. You only have to define business objects and view controllers or window controllers, basically. That's it. Then let's move a little bit, and we have the web module. If we open the references, you will see that in here you have system web, where the web controls live. So also you see that most of the DLLs that you have referenced in the diagnostic module, they are here also, but sometimes they have the prefix or suffix web. For example, let's see, exacharts.web. So you will know that those are the implementation for the web platform in this case. And that here you have diagnostic implementation. For example, here you have extra charts. And in here you have charts.web. So then you see the progression that you have something that is agnostic, that is not related to any platform or user interface, and something that is actually oriented to a user interface, like web or Windows Forms. The same case happened with the Windows module, the Win module. If you see the references, you will see that some of them end in Win, which means that are the implementations for the Windows platform or Windows Forms platform in this case. And also, the biggest sign that is a Windows project, System Windows Forms. All the Windows Forms control lives in here. So now you know, like, for example, if you want to create a multi-platform project, you cannot mix and match. You cannot have System Web and System Windows Forms in the same project. That's why they split it. So when you want to access something for web, you only have web-related stuff in that assembly or project. Or when you want to access stuff for Windows, you only have Windows controls and APIs in that project. And then you have the implementations of them, which are the Windows and web applications. So basically, for example, a Windows application will load the Windows module, and the Windows module will have reference to the diagnostic module. So basically, the application will have three levels: the business logic, the UI logic, and the application, which is basically the container. The same for web. It goes from the web application, then the web module, and the web module contains reference to the diagnostic module. Again, the same structure. So that's why there are five projects. The business logic, which is shared, then the UI logic that is split between platforms, and the application also that is split between platforms. So that is basically the project structure. So now we will learn about, well, we don't have any here, but we should have put business object. A business object is nothing more than an XPO class, a representation of an object. So we're going to come here and we're going to do an XPO object. And we will do customer. So in here, what we have is basically, let's remove all of this because at the beginning is scary. You see so many comments, but I think it's good. But when you write this every day, you're a little bit tired of them. So this is the magical XPO object. It's a customer. It inherits from base object. So if we go here and we go to definition, base object is nothing more than XP custom object. And if we go deeper, this is an XP base object. So basically this is XPO. It's just another layer with a little bit more functionality. So you can do this the same. If you want to write just a class, you do a class, my class, and then you change the base to either base object or any of the child's object of base object, which are the inheritance from XPO, XP custom object, XPO object, XP base object. So we're not going to use this right now, but what I wanted to prove is that this is a normal class. The magic lies in the base class that you're inheriting from. So what does a customer have? Usually a name and a code. So let's do, we will use code rush magic in this case. I think we need to put this shortcut for later, like maybe in the notes.
Yeah, I will add them on the description of the video.
Yes, because this is really useful. Just some heads up. Not all the shortcuts work all the time. It is depending on the context. But what you need to know, the most magical shortcut is XP. And let's see, I don't know if they have it here. Well, it's in here, but XP means persistent property or XPO property. So then you only need to define the type. So the type is here you have the list of known types, the system types. So if you want to create a Boolean, it will be XPB. If you want to create a byte, it will be XPBY. If you want to create a char, it will be XPC, and so on. So this is what you need to actually learn. And then you can include your own type if you want. But with knowing this, the system types, it will save just, you can only imagine how much time. So let's do it fast. XPS, we need a code. We need a name, another XPS name. And we need to know if it's active. XPB, a Boolean, active. And I was talking with someone one of these days that I didn't have my computer with me. I was flying, and then my bags were delayed, and my charger was there. I cannot use my computer. So I told them, hey, I will connect to the server and write the code there. And I didn't have code rush in the server. Just to write a few lines like these classes, like with 6 properties, took me forever because I cannot write code without code rush. It's the most amazing refactoring tool that exists. So, okay, we have the customer. So we can do another object. We're going to do an invoice. Let's delete again all of this. And then let's create some properties. I'm going to XP date. D8 that will create a date time. So this will be date. Then we will do an XPO to create a reference to an object. I think I will make this a little bit bigger. XPO. This will be a customer. Actually, you can use the XPO shortcut for everything because it prompts you for the type that you want to use. So if the type is already defined in your assembly, you can just use it basically. Okay, so we have customer and date. I guess we will add something for the total of the invoice. So we're going to do a decimal total. In XAF, if you want to represent currencies, for currencies, use decimal. For a decimal, use a double. It's funny, right? Because decimal is a small, is the smallest type. So usually if you want to express something in money, you don't use big numbers. Well, of course, maybe in Europe, like before the euro, in Spain they have Spanish pesetas, where they can tell, hey, how much is for this hamburger? And they will sell 25 million pesetas, but it will be like $5. So they use big numbers to express low amount of quantities, but not anymore. Also in Chile, it happened the same. Uh, the smallest bill is like 1,000 pesos, which is like $2. So whenever they want to express money values, they use really, really big numbers. But in most of the cases, you will use decimal to express a currency value, and you will use double to express a decimal, because double is a bigger, is the size in memory is bigger. So to be more efficient, decimal is money, double is something with floating point, basically a decimal. So we have the total, and well, that's it basically for the invoice. Now we will do another class, invoice detail. So again, it's time to remove this. So we will have a product. Do we have a product? No, we don't have a product yet. So let's do a product first. So we have the product class, and the same. A product contains a code, then XPS name, and I will do maybe a decimal for unit price. That's it. Quite simple, right? So we have the product. Let's go back to the invoice detail. So in the invoice detail, we need unit price also. We have, well, we need a product, XPO product. We need a quantity, which in this case I will use a double, because you can have 0.1 of a pound, for example, or a liter, depending on what you're selling. So quantity, and then total, which is a decimal again. Okay, so now we have two entities, invoice and invoice detail. You know that we need to make them, we need to relate them, right? So of course you have been using XPO, I guess, before. So for that we have some shortcuts. XPA, which you use in the many side. Okay, so XPA, we're going to refer to the, oh no, sorry, XPA, invoice. So it's basically the same as any other shortcut, but it put this in top, which is the association attribute. So you know how the master object will look for the details. So we have this. I always copy this association to make sure that I make it in the right way. So copy here, F12, go to the definition, and we're in the invoice class now. So in here we're going to do XPCL, which means a collection. This goes in the one side to refer the many. So this will be invoice details. And remember that I copied the association attribute. I just always paste it in here because this value in front, in the middle, sorry, it needs to match. Otherwise, the association will not be created in the good way. It will actually throw an exception. So in here we will use, we use XPCL when you are in the one side and you want to create the association with the many. side. Okay. So we have customer, invoice, product, and I think that's it. So let's run this. So first, let's check some stuff. We're going to do a small life cycle of the application. We have the project structure, we have the persistent objects, which we didn't include in here because you should come from an XPO background in this case. But we're going to see the application lifecycle. Basically, when you compile, XAF creates something that is called the model, which is the application model, which is, it goes through all the persistent objects and it generates views, which we saw in here also in the terminology. So they put those views inside of the compile assembly, but also there is a part that is the configuration of the view, which is a soft, it's a soft model. It's in XML format. So if you remember, we have all our assemblies here, our projects, and if you can see in all of them, you have this model file, which if we look to this, let's see, let's open this in Folder Explorer. It's basically an XML. And in here, the soft part, you only include the difference. That's why it's called model design diff. Because in here, you will include whatever it doesn't match with the compiled version of the model. So when you compile, XAF create a compiled version of the model, which is included in the assemblies, in the final assemblies. But you can manipulate it through the soft part. So also, when you run the application, both of them, web and Windows, will do something. I will open both of them so you can see. In here, there is an event on each of the applications, which is the database version mismatch. This happened before the application start, but after the application has been set up already. So basically it means that our class are compiled and XAF is going to check the database to see if the tables exist and if they are in the right order to match the classes that we have created. So in here it says something like, if the debugger is attached, if the application is being run from the studio, then update the database and mark the event as handled. This is the web application. In the web application is the same. See, the same event, which is wire, and the same code, basically. So it means that every time that you run your application, XAF will check that the model of the classes of the ORM matches the database. And if not, it's going to update it. Add new fields, remove fields. Well, it doesn't remove fields from the database, but it will not show in the user interface. So you create your classes, you compile, XAF create the model, and then when you run the application, it will update the database. That's basically the most basic life cycle of the application. So let's run it. Let's see if everything is fine. Let's see. And of course, if any one of you wants to stop me at any time, or you want to ask something, you can put it in the chat. And also, if you don't understand something that I'm saying, because I think I have a strong Spanish accent, not from Spain, but from Latin America. So sometimes people have problems understanding me. Well, going back to the code. Okay, we know that we compile the model, we create a soft model, then XAF updated the tables. But let me close this. Let's go back here. And then it will XAF, after finish creating the schema of the database and making sure that everything match, it will run this class, the updater class. This is something that happens every time that a database mismatch happens. So this is the perfect part to create your initialized code, to create your first user, to create your first role, to initialize anything that you want to initialize in your application. For example, I had a project with the Salvadorian electricity company, and they have this on their policies is someone create the application or someone creates an application and the software is done, it's in production, but the DBA have to go to the database and create the first user and the first role so the administrator of the application can log in. And for me, that's something was really strange when I learned that they do it that way. Because for me, an application should be self-contained. So the application should be able to create the first user and the first role without going under it to the database layer to insert data by queries. For me, it doesn't make sense. So uh, for me, it's like, why don't we use the updater? That's why the updater is for. But of course, in traditional development, you do everything in the most poetic and romantic way. It's basically like a poem that you cannot replicate because they are not using a framework. So they don't have a structured method to do each part of the application or each part of the life cycle of the application. They don't have in all of their application an updater class, but SAF does. That's the beauty of using a framework. So if you have another coworker with you that is writing code with you, you can tell, hey, if you want to initialize something, just use the updater, and it will be a common language for both of you. So in here you will when you open this will change depending on the options that you set on the wizard at the beginning. But uh, this includes the setup of the first role and two users, I think, two roles and two users. So that's why you can log in after the application start, basically. So this is part of the magic that you might not see, but is actually there. The main problem with SAF is that it's too good, that you don't know that they have fixed so many problems for you that you didn't even knew you have. So it's somehow tricky. But when you see what they're doing, you understand, oh, that's why this happened. That's why I have a user right now. I can just log in. So right now it's checking the database, and if it doesn't exist, it will create the database and the tables and so on. And bam, we have the applications. We have all the modules that we have implemented. And of course, each module contains, I will say, um, like two main things actually. Each module will provide you with new business objects that you don't have to define, that are already defined for you, and also a set of controllers and actions that they didn't exist before, that they will run over the business objects that are defined in that module. So basically, we're doing that for our business problem. We're providing objects that represent the tables and so on, and we're providing view controllers and actions to trigger the logics on for fixing our business problem, basically. So in here you have a navigation item for each of the classes that we define. But in some cases, this is wrong. But let's see. Well, I fixed it before I show it to you. Whenever you define a business object, it comes with this attribute. The default class option means that this object will be available for reporting, that there will be a navigation item for this object, and that you can do the CRUD operations, basically. So if you see a master detail example like invoice, which contains an invoice detail, you don't want to access the detail without accessing the master. So having the default class option in here doesn't make sense. Of course, that's why I deleted it, because I do it automatically. Sometimes I forget that I do it like that. But as I've been writing this for so long that I know that whenever it's a master detail, you just remove the default class option attribute. So that's why there is no navigation item for invoice detail, but there is a navigation item for customer and invoice and product. See, invoice, customer, product. And the way to go to the invoice details should go through the master, actually. If we do a new object here we have the details. So you don't have to access them without accessing the main object, which is the invoice. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation. So we learned about the project structure, about the life cycle, what is happening, and we talk a little bit about the model. But let's see the model right now. Let's see the model and the modules. So I will close all these files.
Okay. Now
Yes.
you're getting to the point of the model. I think that there is a question they actually asking about that, about the structure, the layer structure of the model from the agnostic platform to the Windows or web.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Basically, what it will happen is that is you will is a cascade basically. So whatever you do in this one will affect the next one. So whatever you do for the common one will affect Win and Web, and whatever you do for each of these will affect the application level. So if you want to do something common, you should start from here, so you can like cascade the changes, right? So this will drop here and here and here and here. But if you're not that interested in that and you want to customize your application in a separate way, you can just go to the application level and do everything in the application level. Also, the model is not exactly the same. The model in here in the application level contains some nodes that are not in here. Actually, let's open two of them. This is the agnostic one. And let's open the application one. Let's see.
I love how in 19.2, I think the application the model, it takes the same color of as the ID. So now it's black as your DAG team.
So if your ID is blue, it will be blue.
Yeah.
Ah, nice, nice. It's nice. I don't like the white version actually. So, okay, so we have these models. So one is the one from the agnostic that you're carrying down to the application level, and one is the application level. So, for example, let's see. Uh, which one is which actually? Let's see in options. Okay, this should be diagnostic and this should be the application. Because if you see the options in the application level, you have something that you don't have in the agnostic. In the application level, you have something like the UI behavior. If it's going to be an MDI or SDI, which type of window are you going to use? If you're going to use tab MDI, if you're going to use some skins. So the most complete model is the one in the application level. But you need to be careful that sometimes you might do something in here and you will override them in here. So the one that will be the winner, it will be the application level. So whatever you do, if you do it in the application level, it will show when the application starts. If you do it in here, it still can be overridden by the modules or by the application level. So you need to make sure where you do your changes, depending on what you want to do. And okay, and now the other difference is, for this I will open the one in the middle, which would be the, in this case, the Win model. For example, in here, in the agnostic level, when you go, for example, to a view, these are the views that are created for each of the persistent classes in the application. Most of them at this moment are not ours. We didn't write them. For example, all of these here, I don't know if I can highlight. Yes, I can highlight them all. These, oh no, all of these here, all these views are not part of our application. I mean, we didn't write them. Are from the modules that are provided by Developer Express, the one that we implemented when we select them on the wizard. So can you imagine? These are basically the drawing of each view on the user interface. Can you imagine how much time have you saved already by just writing like a few classes? And the ones in here, these are the ones for our application that if you see, there are just a few of them. So if you see, we have a customer class in the business object. And then we have a customer detail view, which is the form where you enter the values. Then you have the list view, customer list view, which is the grid that you go after you click the navigation item. And whenever other class is referring to the customer, like for example, the invoice have a field that is called customer, a property that is called customer, it will be represented by the lookup list view. So these views are the default views that SAF create for you. So can you imagine for each class that you have already three views created that you didn't have to write any code for it or drag and drop any control for that. It's just a time saver. Like there is no other way to say it. And the same goes for each of the classes here. So now that we were talking about what is different between the application levels, is that, for example, if I go, let's say, to the customer list view, in here it will show which type of control is using. Let's see, the editor type. Okay, the editor type is not filling here because we are in the agnostic level. We don't know which control will represent that list view, that grid. We know that it's going to be a grid because it's a list, but in this case, we don't see the editor type because in this it's not UI related. But if we go to one of the platform levels, if we see the list view, it will show you that we'll use a green editor grid list editor. So you see the physical implementation or the platform implementation of what a list view is. So in here you can access some other options that you might not have in the agnostic module. So in the agnostic module, you only have business logic related options. In the platform, you have options for the controls. If you want the grid to be blue or green, or to be sorted, or to have more or less columns, you do that in the platform level, basically. And well, let's go back to the presentation. So that's a little bit about the views, the models, and well, only that, I think. We will see the modules right now, how the modules affect the model and your application. And also we wanted to implement a module without the wizard, because once you start having wizards in anything, people forget how to do it in the normal way, in the regular way. So let's compile this. And each module contains something that is called the module designer. And each application contains something that is called the application designer, where you can drag and drop some options or some objects that will modify your application. So in here, this is the module. And if I double click over it, it will open the module designer. So in here, this is your module. These are all the modules that your module required, that are the ones that we selected in the wizard, basically. And here you will see the controllers that are provided for each module. See the system module, how many controllers do they offer for you? These are all the controllers that create the basic behavior of the application. What happens when you click on a navigation item? What happens when you click on a grid to make the sorting? What happens when you double click in the grid to open the detail view? So all of those functionalities are defined in view controllers, which are containing other modules, basically. In this case, the system module, which is one of the biggest ones. And for example, let's see the clone module. The clone module is one of the smallest one, only contains one view controller with one action that is clone. So this is pure logic related, so it doesn't have any user interface related controller. So it's really simple. See, one view controller, one action. So we said that we wanted to implement one module, and I think we selected the pivot. We took it out of the list so we can do it by hand. So let's see, if you go here, you see pivot grid module, pivot grid ASP.NET module, and pivot grid Windows Forms module. So it means that there is one module for each of the platform. In here, it will contain the data types and business logic that you need to show a pivot grid. And in each platform, it will contain all the options for that specific platform in the end. So right now, I opened the module designer for the agnostic module. So it means that I should be, the correct way should drag the agnostic implementation of the pivot grid here. Okay, now it's implemented. In here we have pivot grid module. Then if we see the controllers, let's see if they add some controllers, pivot chart. No, I think they don't add any new controllers actually. And let's see the third section, which is the exported types. The exported types are the classes of the business object that the module will add to your application. So see, in some of the module add business classes. For example, the KPI module. It adds all these classes, the KPI scorecard, the KPI history item, the KPI definition, and so on. So you can see the same for the state machine. There is an object called state machines, if I recall well. Yes, state machine object base. And then you have objects for the transition and so on. So these are the objects that are added to your application. Basically, they will be represented by new tables, actually. So, okay, we implemented the agnostic module. So it means that we have the business logic way to handle a pivot grid, but we don't have any UI representation. So in here, I just want to show you something. Let's go to the model again. I will go to the model in the Win application. And I will go to any list view. So let's go and pick our assembly here. So let's go to the list view of customers. And it shows that it can be represented by a grid list editor and a chart list editor. We have two options right now. So let's see what happened when I implemented more modules. When I implemented more modules, I told you they will add new business object, new controllers, and also, which I forgot, new property editors. So in here, if we put the pivot grid Windows Forms module and we drag it in here, again, it's in the list, also it's in the required modules. And in here, it didn't extend that much, basically, because it didn't add any exported types. The exported type makes more sense to add it in the agnostic module. So we're going to compile this. Just rebuild this. So in here, we added the module and we open this. And now that we go to the list view, we have a third option. So each module can add not only business objects or new tables, basically. It will add new view controllers and possible new property editors that you can use to represent data in a different way. So before the list, we can only represent it with a grid, with a pivot chart. Now we can also use the pivot grid. In this case, we have a third option. So see how every module that you add will extend what you can do in the model and will give you more options, basically, on how to represent data. So I think it's like really well organized. So let's go back to the presentation. We have covered basically modules again and model. So we also have cover views, and we need to check controllers. We see that the controllers are there, are in the module designer, right? But let's create our one controller. So we're going to create an agnostic controller that will execute some business logic. In here, there is a big fight, or where do I put the business logic? Does the business logic should be part of the object or not? Or should be in a separate library? Well, that's basically up to you. In the most, if we want to follow the object-oriented methodology, everything should be self-contained in an object. So everything that is related to the invoice or to the customer, to the product, should be encapsulated in that object. But it depends on if you plan to represent, to use your ORM somewhere else. It will make more sense that you included there the business logic inside of the objects. If not, it might be better to just put it in view controllers. Or we have a third option that is the one that I like the most, which is that you don't implement it in the business object or in the view controller. You create a separate class for the logic. So you can say like you have product, then you will have product logic class and product view controller. Can be list view controller, detail view controller, as you want to name it. So that is the most portable, I think, because you don't write nothing related to the framework in the logic layer. And that's how domain component work. Actually, you create a definition of the object, which is only the properties to persistent, not logic at all, just the persistent get and set, basically. Then you have an object where you create all the logic, and then you call that logic from a view controller. So we're going to do something in between, that we're going to create a view controller for this. I will add a new view controller here. You don't have to add them in this folder. It's just for organization. It doesn't mean anything, actually. So we're going to create the invoice view controller. So we're going to add an action, which is basically a button where we will execute some logic. So let's go to the properties, and the caption will be process. Then the name will be, I always put SA for simple action process. The ID, you can leave it auto-generated. And then we just need to add a handler for the execute method. So in here, this will happen when we press action. So what we're going to do is, in the view controller, I have access to the view. So I have access to the data objects, basically the XPO objects. So each view controller contains a property that is called current object. This view, current object. So this is an object, type of object. I mean, if you go here, this is an object. So it means that it can contain any instance of any other object that you have in your application. So we need to unbox it from there. So we will put it in an invoice. So let's import the namespace, and we will do invoice like this. So in this case, we're casting what we have in the view to an instance of an invoice, actually. So what we're going to do the totalization. In here, I can say invoice details. We're going to do link sum. So we're going to do the invoice detail sum for the field invoice detail total. And we're going to assign this to invoice.total. And that's it. And of course, we have changed this. It means that we set something to a property. We will do the sum of the details. But then the main question is, what do I do after that? You know that in XPO, everything is transactional. So this basically treats a transaction. But the question is, what do I commit to the database? I know that the invoice, if I come from an XPO background, contains a session. So the question is, should I commit the session? And the answer is no. Then we're going to touch one of the other points, which is object space versus session. Since we're working in a XAF level right now, not in an XPO level, basically what is happening in the session is not important for you. What you need to use is the object space. So each view is attached to an object space, which will connect to a session eventually. So in this case, what we should do is say this view object space commit changes. This will go through the object space, then communicate with the session or the unit of work, and then in the end commit the changes to the database. So this is XAF level. We can do it in a different way. We can go underneath XAF and use just XPO, but it's not correct. There is, I mean, you can do it as a hack, but to be more, I mean, to follow the rules of XAF in this case, we should always use the object space. There are some reasons or some cases where you want to go deeper, and you want to go deeper for speed, because at this time we're going through all the XAF machinery, and for example, if you have the audit trail module, the audit trail is listening to the object spaces. So it will start tracking what happened to your object because you're using an object space. But if you're using a session or a unit of work, it will not track it. You will, because you will be underneath the XAF infrastructure. So in this case, we're going to use the object space. But the object space, as we saw before, is an interface. And since we know that we're using XPO, we can do something here to go deeper if we want to go deeper. We have to do this. We have the object space, and we will cast it as an XP object space. Let's import the namespace. And let's put this here, bar XP OS. So if we ever need to go deeper, you can just go to the object space you cast it as the XP object space. And in here, then you have level 2 XPO functionality, for example, the session. And with the session, you can access the data layer. And you can go basically more close to the database engine here. That's why it will be faster, because you're in a deeper level. But I will just put this here. I will not do anything. I will not go down to XPO. I will just use XAF in this case, the XAF level. So let's run this. Let's go here. And let's create an invoice. Well, we need to create some stuff before. Let's create a product. One, name this will be an iPod. And I don't know how an iPod is. I don't know if they even exist anymore. Who is an iPod when you have an iPhone? But let's say it's like Apple goes crazy with the prices. It's $999. And let's create another product that doesn't exist. This will be 2. and will be a Microsoft soon. I don't remember how you spell that. I don't remember if it's with X or with C. But let's do soon. I think that was called the player from Microsoft. This will be cheap, $200. And let's go to the invoice. Let's create a new invoice. And of course, we need a customer. We will use customer number 1, which is my brother all the time. He's in all my examples. So we have a customer and we have some products. And we have the invoice, but well, let's run this first so you can see the problem before I fix it. So the invoice date is today. The customer is my brother. The total, we will not put it. We want to calculate. We have this process action for that. So we're going to add an invoice detail. We're going to select the product. But here the main problem is that when I select the product, I'm not reading the unit price. It's still 0. So let's change that. Some small business logic that we can provide, that those, if it's that small, you can use it in the business object. You can create it in the business object itself. So let's go to the invoice detail. And we have a magic method here, which is called onChange. This will trigger every time that the property is changed. So we can say if the property that changed, we have the property name for that, was the property name of invoice, no, product in this case. If the product changed, or if the property name is equal name of, I think we name it quantity, let's say. Let's see, quantity. If any of these change, we want to calculate the total. So we will ask if product is not null. We will read the price, the unit price, and we will set it in the invoice line. So we will set this unit price. We will set it to the product price. And then we will tell that the total, this total, will be equal to the quantity by the unit price. And we'll have to do some casting here because quantity is double. This is decimal, and you cannot do that. So let's do this. And now we can write the total here. And if the product is null, then we want to set this total to 0. And we will set the quantity also to 0. So let's go to the invoice. Let's make a new invoice. Let's set the date and the customer. And the total is not calculated yet. Let's go into other detail. Let's buy an iPod. See, now the price is set in here. Let's change the quantity to, let's buy 2 iPods, one for me and one for my brother. And see the total, we're spending almost $2,000 in iPods. Let's do another one. I will buy soon, or Zoom, I don't remember the name. We'll buy only one. And okay, so we have like $2,100 in here. So let's process it so we can do the total in here. So see, that's how I move the total from here to here. So in this case, we have some small business logic in the object and some other business logic in the view controller. You can mix and match, or you can create a separate library as we talked before. Like you can create invoice logic and all the logic be contained in there, not in the definition of the persistent object. The persistent object should only contain logic related to save and retrieve the information for the database. It's not like the theory of the object-oriented programming that everything should be contained inside of the object. So let's save this. And let's go to the PowerPoint again. So we have actions, modules, model, controllers, object space versus sessions. And well, we have one more topic to demonstrate in here, which is that a XAF application is just a normal .NET application. Most people will ask me, hey, Jose, like, how can I change the settings for this editor, for this decimal editor, for whatever you name it? So let's go to the view controllers. In the view controller, you can access the controller, but it will be the controller in the agnostic, how is defined in the most agnostic way. So if you really want to touch the platform object, like a text box, for example, you need to go to the Windows module or the web module if you're going to use a web controller in this case. But let's do it in Windows. It's easier to understand. So let's add a view controller here. And we will call this controller. So here we have this method on view controls created. So let's go here and let's see. Let's try to get. Let's try to access the control. And I'm going to do this list view controller. We're going to do this that will be related to what? To the invoice list. Type of invoice. Let's import the namespace. And this is going to be target view type. It will be list view. So in this case, we will see what the control is. So let's run this and see what happened after the controls are created for the view. So this controller is assigned to the invoice type of object and to the list view. So when I go to a list view of invoices, which I think was the list that I left open in the end, it will execute the activated and the view controls created. So in this case, see, the control of this view is an extra controller. Basically, this is the grid from Developer Express. So in here, well, this when you see it in design time, this type of property is an object. As we know, objects can contain. Oh, what's happening here? Well, let's run this again. Objects can contain a reference to any type of object because it's the most basic class. So in this case, what is defining here as an object, see, is an object. It will be filled with the real instance, which is a grid actually. So once you have the grid on hand, you can do whatever you want with it. It's just a physical control as the one that you drag and drop. The only difference is that you don't access in a visual way, that you drag it to the form and then you see the properties. I think my my studio is going crazy, but anyway, I guess it's because I'm stopping here. But with this, you can basically go to the platform level and access each control as you will do in the designer and change the properties if you want. So you don't have to be afraid that stuff is like a black box that you will not be able to see what is inside. There is always a way, but you need to understand the architecture. So you know that when the view creates the controls are the physical controls, and then you can access them. Basically, again, as the bullet points in here, a SAF application is just a regular Windows form or ASP.NET. There is nothing to be worried about it. So I think that's the last point we're going to cover today. And let's see what else we have. Well, we will have a Q&A in the end, but we will finish with the technical demonstration. If you have any questions, you can put it in the chat if you want. And if not, you can come back to us later, like in Twitter, Facebook, or whatever. So let's move forward back to the presentation. We see all of this. The communities. Now we have the demo, which was a technical. Okay, where you and I and everyone can find support? First, the community. We have the staff XPO and Xamarin, which cannot be more obvious. The name is really explicit. And of course, if you have the membership, if you're already a customer of Developer Express, you can go to the support center. And well, if you live in Arizona, you can go to the Arizona meetup group. We have a Gitter chat, LinkedIn, and in here also you can look for my channel. I have around 200 videos. Most of them are SAF related, and if they are not SAF related, they are .NET related most of the time. Everything is around .NET on my channel. And also you can see the amazing video of Dave and Adam from Yamachan, how to build a CRM application. Also in resources, here you have as much as you can want in any language that you can speak. We have the official blog for the community of Developer Express. Then this is my personal blog. Again, is most of the time, well, all the time is .NET related, and most of the time is SAF related also, or XPO. Because I think like what I love the most about SAF is actually XPO. This is one from Apostolis, and this is the one from Javier. Then you have all our Twitter accounts. Of course, you should subscribe to SAF Weekly if you want to know what is new in SAF and what is happening in the community. And this portal, which is really good if you are looking for more programmers for SAF to develop your own application, to develop a project for you, or if you're looking for a job actually, working with SAF, you can go there and post either your resume or your job. And we will open a site for training soon. But the website is not running yet. But of course, you can contact Dave from Damachan or contact me if you want to do the training in English or Spanish. And let's see what else we have. Also, this is one of my parts. In Bit Frameworks, we love frameworks. That's why we call our company like that. And we have developed two new frameworks. One is XPO Web API. So if you want to move your SAF application to Xamarin with the less amount of effort possible, then our product is for you. These products are not in beta stage. They're actually quite old products. We have been using them for some years already, but they were not defined as a product. They were just some code that we use. Now they are a commercial product. So we are doing the last part um, of polishing them, and we're almost in release time already. So if you want to move your application from SAF to Mac OS to Android to iOS, the way to do it is our web API. It will save you a lot of time, a lot of problems also, and you will write Xamarin applications or Uno applications or any other type of applications in the way that you like, which is using objects from XPO. And then also we have a second product, which is one of the most amazing things that we have ever created, is a way to use XPO offline and synchronize it with a database in the server. So that product, basically, you can have a Xamarin application, which will be, say, all the data in SQLite inside. And then you can synchronize it with a web API service that will be attached to an Oracle database, an SQL database, a DB2 database. So you name it, any combination supported by XPO, we actually support it. So everyone is looking for to make offline applications for XPO and using Xamarin, so or Uno in this case. So we will be writing some articles and putting them in our blogs or in the YouTube channel. So follow us, please, if you want to be updated about what is happening with these two technologies. And let's see, I guess that's everything. If you are in need of training for your company or for yourself, you can contact me at bitframeworks.com. And well, also if you have any questions, you can write them right now in the chat. Or if not, if the question will appear in your mind while you're driving back home, you can just send us an email. You can write us in the Facebook group or in Twitter also. So now I get the control back to Javier.
Thanks for the great presentation. I really enjoy and I really think that slide about the community is awesome. I cannot stress enough how great the community is, and I wish when I started I would have a community that I can ask questions to. So please join the Facebook group, subscribe to XAF Weekly, follow those amazing blogs, and I will give around 1 more minutes for in case someone else have another questions. But if not, thank you for showing up. Thank you, Jose. This has been great. And that's it. Hopefully there is a question soon. If not, thanks everybody for being here.
Well, it looks like it was. I think it was a good presentation for being our first presentation, and we covered a lot of topics. I think it was like really extensive, but there are some points that you never think about it, that we stop and say like, this is why it's happening. This is where this option is located. This is what happened when you compile. So the more you know the framework, the more you will be sure that there is nothing to be afraid. Actually, as we speak with you, Javier, even if I do an application which is only one form, I will use XAF anyway, because I don't want to write user interface first. And it will look way better than my user interface that I will do by dragging and dropping. And also there is no fastest way to develop. So
I completely agree, Jose, and I actually will do the same thing. And I was actually feeling identified with your story about Code Rush. Right now, I can do nothing without it. So I'm so used to it that I'm spoiled. If I don't have Code Rush, it takes forever for me to do anything. So
yes. So any questions so far, Javier?
no, nothing. So thanks a lot,
Let's
everybody,
wrap
for being
around.
here. Thanks a lot, Jose, for the presentation, and see you next month.
Okay. Bye, guys. Take care.